everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coast to Coast. This is your host, Joe Dellera, and I am flanked by two superstars in the game here. You know, I've got two special guests for this episode of Coast to Coast. I have Scott Rachel at Rachel Radio, host of the SGPN NBA Gambling Podcast, and I also have Colby Olson, betting contributor for JustBaseball. Nice of you guys to join me. Scott, how you doing today?
They're doing pretty well. Looking forward to, of course, the final set of playing games before the actual fun starts. So looking forward to it. Should be, entertaining next couple days and next couple weeks.
Yeah, I know. There's plenty of great basketball to be betting on. But Colby, I know we're taking you a little bit. We're changing the court. We're changing the ball that you're normally used to dealing with here a little bit. But talk to me about what you've seen so far in the NBA playoff or the play-in tournament. And are you excited to watch some more playoff basketball? All right. He got actually a little bit too excited, I think. And we'll come back to Colby. We might have had a little technical difficulties there. But Scott, let's start in real quick with the play-in tournament. Obviously, there's so many things going on with the play-in. A number of different injuries. We did have a little bit of an upset yesterday with the Mavericks taking care of business against the Kings. And I continue to make this joke about the Sacramento Bulls. But what do you think about the play-in tournament overall? Now we've had a couple seasons of it, and do you think it's a success? Do you like it? Do you want to keep it, or do you want to see it changed a little bit, Scott?
I think it's a success because, one, it gets people to pay attention to a few more games. You have some standalone games by itself if you're trying to draw some ratings. But do I think it's the highest quality basketball? No. I feel like we all feel the same way about it. Now, the Heat made the finals, so that counts for something to show the success of this product in the past, because we have had a team get in from the play-in to the actual finals. Would the Heat have gone in anyway in a regular bracket situation? Yes, but still, the point is we have had a team make a deep run before out of this. At the end of the day, I wouldn't mind it if they got rid of the 10 seeds. I feel like the 8 versus the 9, give me one play-in game, we'll go from there. I'm fine with that. Then again, it's kind of bad timing by me because the 10 seeds won yesterday. So I guess that's kind of one way to look at it as well. But do I need to see the Mavericks and the Kings play? No. If you want to add a stipulation, they have to be a 500 team to get in. Maybe that's a nice stipulation to add to, where some years you have it, some years you don't. You should be incentivized to at least finish with a 500 record. You're not asking for much. But the point is, I do think that it's a fun kind of midweek product right before the actual playoff start. But we know it's not the highest quality basketball. But after March Madness ends and you're waiting for the NBA playoffs to start, you'll take anything at this point. So I guess we're fine with the games.
Yeah, I feel like I don't mind it too much just because it is an opportunity to give all the actual good teams an opportunity to rest, and we still have a little bit of basketball to bet on. Colby, when you were watching the games, or if you were watching the games, I know personally I recorded during the Hawks Magic game. I was like, I don't need to watch that one. What did you think about it? And is there anything that maybe you learned that you want to apply for tomorrow as we dive into best bets for tomorrow's play-in games?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, congratulations to the Magic. It does suck for them that they have to go and now play the Celtics, because I think that the Magic are a very solid team. But going into tomorrow night, and I don't know if my mic settings are good here, so let me check that real quick.
Now you're muted. But go ahead.
Am I here now?
Yeah, now you're here.
Okay. Tomorrow night, going into this game, this Heat versus Hawks game, I have a play in the other game. This one really, I don't know how to take. You have a Heat team who, in their last 2 games against the Hawks, shot 55% from 3. And the Hawks cannot play any defense. They rank 27th in defensive efficiency. I lean the over in this game, but can you expect the Heat to shoot 55% from 3 again? Not really. But I definitely lean the Hawks in the over in this one.
Yeah, I think the Hawks are just kind of a team that can light anybody up, especially with the pace that they play with, and with Trae Young kind of leading the stride. Scott, when you're looking at this game, do you have a lean on a side? And if you do, does it correlate with any props that you're maybe looking at?
Yeah, so for the record, I do have a future that's pending depending on this game that I gave out on VSiN a week or 2 ago. I gave out the Hawks to miss the playoffs at plus 330, so I'm 1 game away from that. My main logic behind it was this team can't guard anybody, so why would I have faith in them to win one of these games? And I feel like that was one of the common themes we saw over the last couple of days in the play-ins. All the teams that basically lost don't play any defense. Hawks don't guard anybody, the Kings don't guard anybody, and the Grizzlies definitely don't guard anybody, and they all lost because they handed out a bunch of points. It's tough to give up about 120 to Orlando. It's pretty tough to do, but the Hawks found a way. So I do think that the Hawks defensively are just a lost cause. Trey didn't want to be there because he got himself ejected, and I do think that when you're looking at this team and all the flaws they have, yes, if they ended up having Jalen Johnson, for example, they'd be better because they had a couple injuries all on the way. Capella's also out. You know the drill. But the point is, the Heat, we know that Spoelstra's been here before. At least Heat basketball does resemble tough, gritty defense. The Hawks try to turn every game into just a track meet, fringe Harlem Globetrotter vibes where they just let the other team score, but they try to score more. You don't win in playoff or postseason basketball with that type of mindset. And I do think that Miami's going to end up winning this game. I feel good about the future, but I know right now it's basically a pick 'em. I would take Miami. I think Miami matches up well against this team. I think that their size with Bam and with Ware can give this team problems as well. But it's mainly the defense because Atlanta just doesn't guard anybody. Miami, the last two meetings this regular season, scored 122 and 131.
Yeah.
It's not a great offensive team either, but you're looking at Atlanta, who just doesn't really have any type of defensive pride at this point. The effort's not there. They were down 20 points on two separate occasions to Orlando in that play-in game. Miami came in, they dominated. Yes, Chicago no-showed the game, but Miami still went in there against a team that kind of owned them in the regular season and just showcased their physical grit and their, I'd say, basketball IQ behind Spoelstra. And the Hawks have none of that, as far as I'm concerned. So I'll take the Heat.
Yeah, I think that I think the coaching aspect is pretty important too, because I think Spo will break out some nuanced coverages, some nuanced things that you don't normally see in the regular season. And Miami, even in that first playing game, they seem to come out with a plan. And I get that they kind of shot definitely over expectation, but at the same time, they came out with a plan, they came out with a strategy, and it was effective. It worked. So we'll have to see, if it's something that you can translate. But like Dyson Daniels has been really, really important for this Atlanta Hawks team. I think this is a really tough matchup for him. He's not really like a great scoring threat. And with the amount of defense that Miami plays, you got two bigs that can protect the rim, and they do tend to play a lot of zone. He's not like a great spot up shooter. I might even be looking in extended minutes. I might still be looking at like a Dyson Daniels under on his points. He struggled against Orlando, and I think that he probably would struggle against Miami as well. So that's where I would be looking in this game. Now for the next game, we obviously have a major question mark with Ja Morant being on the injury report. And that's probably the most important aspect of this game. I'm somebody that thinks that Morant is typically overrated in terms of like his value to the spread based on what he does, what he provides. But at the same time, with this coaching change, it has been a little bit of a recalibration around Morant, around that pick and roll style offense, and using Morant as the clear head of the snake. Now, Memphis has not beaten anybody good. The question for you, Colby, is are the Mavericks a good basketball team now that they're getting to be about as healthy as they've been in a long time?
So the edge in this game, I think, is actually on the total. The Mavericks in their last 20 have gone over the listed total, and they've gone over in 16 of the last 20, 221.5, which is what it's listed at right now. The Grizzlies come in third in offensive efficiency this year, and both the Grizzlies and Mavericks rank outside the top 10 in defensive efficiency. And you bring up Ja Morant's health, which I think is definitely a storyline, but if he doesn't play, I don't think that's a huge deal for the Grizzlies. I agree with you that he is a little bit overrated to that spread, right? The Grizzlies have averaged 125 points in 24 games without Ja Morant and have given up 121. So that's why I lean the over in this one if he doesn't go. And even if he does go, these teams are destined for a lot of offensive success.
Yeah, and our Rithmm model tends to agree with that thought process. So the total right now is at 221, and we're projecting over that. We've got this as a recommended bet with about a 10% difference to market. We're projecting, what is this? This is tough to do math on the fly here, but we're projecting about 224. So we do have this as a projected over. Scott, when you look at this game, what is something that you're either looking for, or do you care? Like, does Morant play? Do you think that Morant matters, or is this a spot where you're just saying, well, I think the Grizzlies are the better team, or maybe Anthony Davis being healthy, Derek Lively being healthy, and some of the lineup changes that Dallas made even to get into this position where they sat Dinwiddie a ton of minutes. They changed the starting lineup. are they willing to maybe take enough chances that they could beat a Memphis Grizzlies team that over the course of the entire season has probably been a little bit better than this Dallas Mavericks team?
Yeah, I feel like the elephant in the room that people keep forgetting about is the coaching and experience. And we saw that with that 5-second violation on the inbound play where I don't even know what they were really trying to do. They were trying to run that Warriors play with the screen from the backside, but nobody came towards the basketball and nobody was open. So Aldama just had nothing to do with it. But you're looking at a game where I would take the over anyway. Memphis doesn't play any defense. We know this, and that's the only way they play. So you're looking at them firing their coach. Did it fix anything? No. They look the same, pretty much. So I don't really think it's going to change much. They want to play a track meet. It's how they're comfortable. Dallas, I think, will want to do the same thing because they do have a lot of matchup on the interior, a lot of advantage on the interior. Edey might be in foul trouble. We'll see. He was in foul trouble against Golden State. I like the over in this game. I think I think you'll end up seeing some points here, whether Job plays or not. For the side, I mean, I still don't think Dallas is that good. They beat Sacramento. I'm not going to overreact to beating the Kings here. Yeah. The Grizzlies went down to the wire. They were down 20 to Golden State. A lot of people thought they're going to roll over, and they fought it. They fought. Ja went to the locker room or he went to the bike, and they were able to keep the game competitive. But I feel like I'm going to stick with the same approach I had for that Warriors game, the game prior. If you want to take Dallas, I would just take the team total over. Because if the Mavericks are going to win this game or keep this game close, they probably have to score 115 because Memphis plays so fast and they have so many scoring options. Memphis wants this game to be up-tempo, and they want this game to get into the 220s, 230s. So I think Dallas, if they're going to win this game, I'd rather take the team total over personally, but I like the over as a whole in this game. Memphis wants to play that way. I don't see Dallas stopping them because Dallas doesn't mind getting out in transition too. So I see an over in this game.
Yeah, I think Klay Thompson might be able to have another big game here. He just had a pretty solid performance in the first playing game. And this is a matchup he's crushed against Memphis as well, clearing 13.5 points in 82% of his games against Memphis dating over the past couple of seasons. Obviously, different teams, different rotations, different data, but he still has been putting up good performances. I think as the veteran kind of there along with Anthony Davis, that might be something that he can kind of bring a little bit of an edge as well. I see we got a comment here about PJ Washington, big PJ Washington believer tomorrow. Do you guys have any thoughts on PJ Washington? His points prop is set at 15.5, rebounds are at 6.5, and his assists are at 2.5. Threes are once again at 1.5. It should be a fast-paced game, so there may be some opportunities for PJ Washington.
Yeah, I'll throw that one over to Scott.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in that. I think that he's got a good matchup for himself. I was actually looking at potentially a defensive prop for Anthony Davis as one of my favorite options for this matchup. I was going to go for the Anthony Davis blocks for this game at 1.5. I know I went over in the last game, but for Washington, I think it's a good spot for him. At the end of the day, when you're looking at what the Mavericks lineup is and how they've kind of reinvented the actual rotations they're using, besides Klay, they don't have many great outside shooters. So based on volume and the fact that you have Gafford and Anthony Davis, who wants to get downhill, who wants to get to the basket, that does open up some chances for PJ Washington to kind of drift back to the three-point line. If you want to go for PJ Washington threes, that's an option too. But once again, for props in this game, I know the Grizzlies, whether Ja plays or not, they want to attack the basket. And Dallas is basically going to let them do it because they have so many rim protectors by there with Gafford and with Anthony Davis. I like the Anthony Davis blocks in this game, but for Washington, I think he's in a good spot to hit some threes. I think that he can be a difficult matchup because he's kind of a tweener, and you're looking at what the Grizzlies have to do there. Do you put Triple J on him? Do you put him on Anthony Davis? Like, you're kind of stuck when it comes to what to do with a Washington. So I think it's a good matchup for him, but I do think there are a couple other props I'm interested in as well.
No, that's totally fair. So let's, we can kind of expect either. I think. Do you think? Okay, here's the real question: out of these teams that come out of the play-in tournament that come in as an 8 seed, do any of these 4 teams have any type of chance against the Cleveland Cavaliers or against the Oklahoma City Thunder? Colby, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very, very tough for the Grizzlies, who I really do think are a good basketball team, to overcome the Thunder. And more on the Thunder later. I would love to have a full-on Thunder conversation, but it's going to be extremely tough for them to come out and beat the Thunder in a 7-game series. But on the other side, too, I think the Heat coming out and trying to beat the Cavs, a lot like March Madness was this year, a very top-heavy tournament. I think that this tournament, too, is a very top-heavy field in the playoffs.
Yeah, me too. Scott, Do you think any of these teams can really pick up even one, maybe even 2 games, or make any of those series live in the 1-8?
Yeah, I think Miami could maybe take one. I wouldn't really automatically pick a sweep for both teams here, but in reality, it should be pretty stress-free for these teams. I think that OKC has too much depth for either of these teams to handle. Dallas, you could argue, historically speaking, but a lot of the meetings this season were kind of misleading because a lot of guys sat in a lot of those games, so you never got the full strength for both teams here. I just don't think the Mavericks guards are good enough to deal with OKC, and I do think that OKC has the front court depth with Chet, with Hartenstein, to match the Gafford and Anthony Davis combo, and the guard play is extremely in their favor. So I think OKC would win that 5 max. That might be a sweep for me. The Heat are interesting because they can always invent ways to steal games over the course of a series, but I don't see it going more than 5 personally. 6 if Miami gets really hot from 3, but in reality, no. I don't see any game 7s, any sweats going on for the top seeds. I think it'll be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, you might be able to parlay like -1.5 games for both of those 1 seeds to advance at least through a series perspective. So with that in mind, let's turn to some of these series that we have, the matchups that we know. And we'll start in the Eastern Conference, and we'll start with my favorite series. We've got the New York Knicks versus the Detroit Pistons. The Knicks are opening at -7 for game 1. They've been better over their last 10 games from an against the spread perspective. But at the same time, New York and Detroit, when you look at this in terms of the series pricing, New York's -420, Detroit's +330. ESPN had their projections up. Everybody they asked, they said Knicks, all the way down. I'm a Knicks fan. I'm definitely a little bit biased here. I think the Knicks can really take care of business. But Scott, looking at New York, I do feel like this number is wrong, as much as I think that New York should be able to win this series without too much difficulty.
Well, just to be clear, I think they should win the series too, but this is Thibodeau we're talking about. So it's never going to be easy. It's never easy. You know that as a Knicks fan. So I personally have the Knicks in 7. I think it's going to be a longer series than people anticipate. The Pistons matched up well against this team in the regular season. Now, that can be a little bit of I'd say a flaw where people focus too much on the regular season meetings, then a couple adjustments get made. Playoff basketball is different than regular season basketball, and sometimes the regular season numbers go out the window. But I do think that Detroit matches up pretty well, or at least they can cause some matchup problems for this Knicks team. I was not a fan with how the Knicks ended the season. They were resting some guys here or there. They lost 3 of their last 4. They blew that 23-point lead to Cleveland, and they were benching half their players. They didn't look good down the stretch. And we saw Detroit beat this team in the last meeting. I don't believe Cat played in that game. Brunson came back. He didn't score for the last 19 minutes of the game. But I do think that the Pistons can cause some problems. The issue that I have, though, is playoff inexperience. And when it comes to actual shot creation for Detroit, I know Malik Beasley's had a great 3-point shooting season. You trust him to create his own shot? Not really. You have Cade. That's kind of it. Maybe a little bit of Tobias Harris in there. But I do think the Knicks have more options when it comes to creating their own offense. You still have the Brunson-Cat pick-and-roll game, which should be lethal. Bridges, we know, you don't notice him half the time, but when he shows up, he can occasionally drop you 20. They have a lot of options that I think can give you solid games, which can help you if one of your main 2 guys doesn't have their best stuff. When it comes to the Pistons, if Cade has an off game and Cade goes for like an inefficient 23 points, do they have a chance? Probably not. I just feel like there's less scoring leeway with this Pistons team based on scoring depth. I'll give them some games. I think the home games in Detroit are going to be insane from an atmosphere perspective. So I think they're going to be a tough team to beat at home. But I do think I'll pick the Knicks, assuming that they stay healthy, of course, with the Tibbs injury histories in the playoffs. I think the Knicks are the better team. But I do think it's going to be more difficult than people anticipate. It's not as sweat-free as people are making it out to be. But give me Knicks in 7.
Yeah, I think you also saw the thing about Detroit, what they were doing, limiting ticket sales for their home games. They were basically saying you had to have like a billing address in like a 3-state area to try to keep New York fans out of there, to kind of keep that playoff environment for a young and relatively playoff inexperienced Pistons team. So, Colby, do you think that Detroit's live? Like, is there a betting angle on Detroit? Or do you think that this is just going to be Knicks like all day and they're just going to take care of business?
No, not at all. I think that if you're betting this blindly, not blindly, but of like you're going into this series blindly, not having any bias towards the players on either side or your feelings towards a big Knicks market versus a small young Detroit market. Pistons at plus 310 is very, very live, and Pistons at plus 1.5 games at plus 135 is also very, very live. The gap between these teams is not much. If you go over to Rithmm and you look at their expected win percentage stat, which mixes offensive and defensive efficiency to find out how teams would do against a league average team, the Knicks have a 56% expected win percentage against the league average team. The Pistons are right there, 52.7%. So I really don't think that the gap between these teams is huge. What it really comes down to is Jalen Brunson. He's the most clutch player in the league, and he can take over games at will. But you're also an injury to Jalen Brunson away. So you could say that about any series, but I really think that the Pistons at plus 310 is live. And should you expect that to hit a lot? No, obviously that's why it's plus 310, but I think it is definitely worth the sprinkle.
Yeah, I think that that's fair. I'm trying not to hedge on my happiness here as a Knicks fan, but I do have a best bet for this series. And that was I think that even despite the fact that Malik Beasley might not make, the most, create the most of his own shots, I do like him to lead the series in threes. And that price, it opened at minus 125, and I was floored by the number. It's since been up. I think the lowest number I'm seeing right now is minus 155 on DraftKings. I think that you can bet it up to minus 200. The numbers that he puts up and the shot that he gives up is specifically one that New York is allowing, right? New York does tend to allow decent looks from beyond the arc, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that they tend to overhelp. And we see this happening with them against a number of different teams. Like DeAndre Hunter continues to get up threes because he's somebody that's that swing pass away. The Celtics, a variety of their players crush New York from beyond the arc, at least the role players anyway. And then you've seen Malik Beasley. He's had games of 5 and 7 threes against them so far this year. So I think that he's got a little bit more of a ceiling for them. I like his over 13.5, 14.5 points in game one. But I do think that you're right, Scott, to a degree with what you're saying with how New York might just force the issue and say, well, you got to beat us off the dribble a little bit. So I don't know if that's something that he's going to want to do or if he's going to try to just keep chucking threes. But I'm not super convinced that there's going to be a ton of volume consistently from anyone else on either team to really match what Malik Beasley's preferred shot is. So I'll take him to lead the series in 3, even with like all the juice. But do either of you guys have any other looks on this series, or should we turn to the next, the 4-5 spot in Bucks versus Pacers? All right.
So I was gonna ask you as a Knicks fan, and of course as a bettor, what is your prediction? Trying to be as unbiased as possible on the series.
I think the Knicks take care of business like in 5. Honestly, I think that the Knicks are a better team. I think that when I say we, I think Tibbs has beaten Bickerstaff before in a playoff series. And the biggest issue was that I think a lot of the problem as bettors, right? We always think about all the things and the progressions that like coaches could do or should do or whatever. And it was interesting because I think Coach Finch talked about it today. And he said, when we're going through playoff series, we want to stick with what worked in the regular season. And we don't want to like blink first and then pivot, right? And I think that that's one thing that we saw with Cleveland when Bickerstaff was the coach a couple of seasons ago. He didn't really make an adjustment during the series. And I'm concerned from a Cleveland perspective, or not a Cleveland perspective, a Detroit perspective, if New York does create a lot of difficulty maybe for Cade, is he capable of making that adjustment? Is the team capable of making that adjustment? Whereas I think New York, they have tried a number of different lineup combinations, in part because Brunson did get hurt. And Tibbs, as stubborn as he is, I do think that he's come up with some creative options, at least offensively, over the course of the season. And you have more people that can create a shot. Like you said, for Detroit, it's really Cade and Tobias Harris, right? Maybe a little bit of Asar Thompson, but he's not somebody that can shoot from beyond the arc. And for New York, you have Brunson, you have Cat, you have Anunoby, you have Miles McBride, and obviously you have Mikal Bridges as well. So I think there's just a little bit more optionality out of New York for this spot. So I think that New York takes care of business pretty fast. But all right, let's turn to the other series in the East, the 4-5 matchup that we've got between the Pacers and the Milwaukee Bucks. This, I think, is a really interesting series. It's two teams that are in the same division, and we just got some news today that Damian Lillard has been, I guess, cleared of these blood clot issues. The Pacers are 5.5-point favorites in game one. They are the 4 seed. They are the home team. And the Damian Lillard thing, I kept seeing this meme and I was cracking up. It was like when Trump did the thing about coronavirus, and he's like, they checked my DNA and it was USA. And people are saying with Dame, I saw a meme and it was basically Damian Lillard superimposed on Trump, and it was, I don't have any blood clots. When they looked at my DNA, it said NBA. And that's how, if you're a Bucks fan, you have to be happy if Damian Lillard is going to be able to play in this series. But Scott, when you see these two teams, I think Indiana has been the better team all season, but Milwaukee's got Giannis. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I feel like you kind of hit the nail on the head there, is that Indiana on paper should probably win the series, but the question is, do you actually want to trust Indiana? I don't think I actually want to. Giannis is the best player on the court by far. I don't think Indiana can guard him, and I actually think the Bucks are very live to win the series. I recorded a show regarding this series before the Lillard news came out. I actually picked Milwaukee at a pretty decent amount of plus money. I feel like based on where the price is located for the series number for both teams, I don't trust Indiana enough. Indiana's a team that has all the makings of what could be a potential deep Eastern Conference run again for the second straight year. The problem is they constantly mess around, and I feel like they just put themselves in holes all the time. To end the regular season, they faced the Cavs on national television, benching their entire team, trailed by double digits. Played the Wizards, trailed by double digits in the first quarter against the Wizards. The team's awful. Yeah. Just going down the line, the Pacers would constantly no-show a quarter, no-show a half, and have to climb out of it. We saw that with the Halliburton 4-point play against this team about a month ago. I don't know how many times in the playoffs you can spot a team 10, 15 points and get away with it. I feel like Indiana, even though this team had a very good run last year, there's a lot of late-game questionable coaching decisions by Carlisle, which can be a problem. Then again, you have Doc Rivers on the other end, so I'm aware of it. But still, I think I'll go with Milwaukee personally. I wonder when Dame comes back, because, of course, it'll be a lot better for Milwaukee when he does come back sooner rather than later. But I feel like based on pricing, it's a question of if I trust Indiana enough to actually take care of business. And I don't. They won last year when both Lillard and Giannis barely played. So that doesn't really matter to me. I'm kind of tossing the series out in general. I'm going to go with Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee's got an unstoppable option. Giannis, if he walked into 37, 13, and 6, would you be shocked? Probably not, because it's actually kind of realistic for what he can do and what he has done. They've been in great form. They won, 7 or 8 straight to end the season?
Yeah, they were hot to finish.
They were playing well, and Dame missed time too. So it seems like maybe they got themselves some chemistry back. Portis came back. Big deal for them, as he gives them a nice scoring punch off the bench. I'll go Milwaukee. I understand Indiana on paper might be the deeper team. There's still something off about how this team's wired. And I feel like with their inability to put bad teams away early and to just force games to be close because of how often they no-show quarters and no-show halves, they're going to fumble a game away they should win. Yeah, and I feel like it's going to be enough for Milwaukee to win the series.
I think that's a fair point. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with their inconsistency at the top. Halliburton has shown flashes throughout this season of the guy who was crushing before the All-Star break last year, before he got hurt. And then all of a sudden, he's been dealing with a bunch of injuries. He's been a little bit more inconsistent this year. I think it's come together over the past couple of months where he's been a bit more consistent. But at the end of the day, a lot of it comes and starts with Tyrese Halliburton. Is he scoring? Is he dishing? Is he just completely not shooting the basketball? And Colby, when you watch Indiana and that's your best player in Tyrese Halliburton, how do you kind of how do you dance around that level of relative inconsistency over the course of the season?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think Scott did as well, is how can you trust? You got to trust the best player in the series, and that's Giannis, who's averaged 36 points per game against Indiana in his career, and that's our last 3 years. I mean, there's some 64 and a 54-point game mixed in there, so inflating a little, but he's like a 30-point machine against Indiana. And again, yeah, you hit it on the nail on the head there, Joe, is Tyrese Halliburton's been really inconsistent this year, and with the Bucks priced at plus 135, plus 140, I think this series should be more like plus 100, plus 110, really, really close to even. And so just looking at the number, I think you just got to play the number with the Bucks and back the best player in the series.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about Giannis, though, because BetMGM had a prop up, and it was for Giannis to score 30 plus in every game of the series, and it was plus 1150. Now, from like I love these bets, but I also hate these bets because I feel like the longer the series goes,
Takes
the less
one game.
value you have.
Takes one game to just
They're
destroy it.
potential 6-leg parlays. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so I think there's some value on some of those when it's like if you think it's going to be a 4-game or maybe a 5-game series, I think there's a little bit more value. But both of you guys think this is going to be potentially a longer series. And I think those like in every game start to get, you're like, oh, I don't know. But then sometimes you can get some of those in any game. I think there was Giannis to score 50 in any game. But now if you think it's a 7-game series, now you got 7 cracks at it. Do either of those props kind of stand out to you, or would you bet either of them?
No, I think I'm just taking Milwaukee at the positive dollar sign, and then over 5.5 at, big juice on that, minus 175 on DraftKings. Not sure where it is other books, but I'm comfortable taking that as well. I really don't think this one's ending in 5.
Yeah. And I see we got a comment here about Miles Turner being super sneaky and it kills him. I actually bet, and I talked about it on Cash That, another show that I do that's presented by Rithmm, and you can get that in my bio. Check it out. And, you can subscribe anywhere that you watch your podcast. But we gave out Miles Turner at 11-1 to lead the series in 3-pointers made. This was obviously before Damian Lillard got, upgraded. But either way, I think I would still like that spot. He's somebody that can stretch the floor, and he's always putting up threes. He has been a little bit of a thorn in the side for Milwaukee. Now, let's look at the next series, which I think we can spend probably the least amount of time on, honestly. But we've got the Boston Celtics versus the Orlando Magic. Boston is a minus 8,000. They are minus 14 in game 1. And I think a lot of people expect Boston to just cruise here. If you looked at the series total games, 4 is the most likely outcome based on the odds at plus 115. Scott, this series seems to almost have a bigger gap than any of the other series, whether that we're expecting in the 1-8 matchups in either conference. Is Orlando live at all in this series? Can they be difficult for Boston with the physicality that they often bring to the court?
Live for what? To win the series?
Just anything. Just live.
I'll pick them to win a game. To win the series, hell no, they're not winning the series. I feel like at the end of the day, Boston should win. You could argue in a sweep. I will give Orlando one game. We've seen Boston constantly mess around and lose games in series they probably shouldn't lose. They had that game a couple years ago where DeJounte Murray ended up missing it, and Trey hit that game winner anyway. And again, they probably should have won against the Heat. They blew a game because the Heat made 20-something 3-pointers. The only series they swept in was Indiana, and Indiana should have won 2 games.
Yeah.
They just punted away those games at the end of regulation. So I'll give Orlando 1. I think the home crowd will be into it. And I think Orlando, with their actual main 2 guys, Franz and Paolo, can give Boston problems, especially if Jaylen Brown's on 100%. Is there a possibility Jaylen Brown misses a game? Boston might not need him in the series, but if he's not fully healthy and he has the knee injections, could they sit him if they lead 3-0? Sure, they could sit him for a game. It wouldn't shock me. So my favorite play in the series to find some value, give me the exact length 5 games at plus 190.
Yeah, I like that. That's actually a pretty big number. FanDuel's only got plus 140 on that number. So
there's DraftKings at 190, I believe.
Dude, that's one of the key things I think with any of these series bets. It's super hard, I think, for these books to book the prices. Everybody has like different internal models, and the sensitivity is going to be all over the place. So you need to be kind of on top of it. Your best friend is having like literally as many books and outs as possible. Colby, is Orlando live at all in this game? Is there any angle that you'd want to back Orlando in, or is it just going to be Boston all day?
I don't know how Orlando is going to score. They come into this series 26th in offensive efficiency. The Celtics can play anybody on you at any time, 1 through freaking 10. I don't know who's going to score for the Orlando Magic. I don't know if you guys have the answer to that. I just really don't know who is going to be the option. It's got to be somebody like those Miami Heat series where somebody just heats up from 3.
Yeah, I think it's going to be real tough for Orlando to get anything going. So let's look at the Western Conference. I don't want to spend any more time on that one, but we've got some really good series, I think, in the Western Conference, and we have the Lakers versus the Timberwolves. Lakers are pretty big favorites. They're minus 184, 186 on the series price, and the Lakers are -4 in Game 1. This has been a spot where I think a lot of people are impressed by both of these teams. Minnesota obviously made the offseason trade, getting away from Karl Anthony Towns, bringing in Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, and the Lakers make the splash for Luka Doncic. Do you have a lean in this series, Colby? And what's your angle? How do you think this happens for whatever team that you're backing?
I think this is another one for me. I mean, the way I'm approaching all of these, and you're probably getting kind of a hint at that, is it's just price, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going into these looking at them super, super in depth. I'm just kind of looking, okay, price wise, and just from an overall offensive, defensive efficiency, the way these teams play, how is this price coming to? And T-Wolves at plus 160 is very enticing to me because I really think that the Lakers, this should be more like plus 120 for the T-Wolves, right? The Lakers, you're always going to get kind of the Lakers price gouge, right? So I think it's kind of an easy bet to take the T-Wolves, knowing that they're pretty equal in terms of offensive, defensive efficiency. It scares me to put any money on Julius Randle at any time, but I think that's the way I'm going in this series.
No, that's fair enough. And Scott, when you look at the series, who do you think is going to be able to come out on top? And how much of it do you attribute to like a Luka versus Ant type of battle, and who could be the best player in the series?
No, having LeBron helps on your roster by comparison to Julius Randle, but I think we're going to agree to disagree here. I feel pretty good about the Lakers in the series. I think that Minnesota, at the end of the day, yes, they can make it interesting. Maybe just a personal bias against this team. They're the most Jekyll and Hyde team in the entire league. They can look incredible for one half and then give up a 34-3 run to Milwaukee in the fourth quarter. I feel like this team is just not always mentally engaged enough, and they seem to just have, I'd say, just lapses offensively, where the spacing just becomes awful, and you're looking at McDaniels taking a bunch of threes, Randall's taking isolation jump shots, Ant's Ant, so Ant's going to be able to get his, but I've seen this team too many times just crumble offensively in the fourth quarter, and I feel like when you're looking at what should be close games based on the spread, you have Luka and you have LeBron compared to Anthony Edwards and Randall. These games might be close, but if the game's going to come down to the wire, I'm taking LeBron and Luka. I just feel like when you're looking at who you trust more in these situations late in games, I'm picking the Lakers options, and Reeves, of course, is a great third option here. Who's the third option for Minnesota offensively? You don't really trust Gobert offensively. Conley's been a mess lately. Yeah. I don't even know if he could close on this team anymore. What is it, McDaniels?
I think it's Dante DiVincenzo. I think it has to be, because I think that Conley's going to get played off the floor. And I think that Dante provides at least enough. He definitely provides enough shooting, enough spacing. He can create for himself. He can create for others. And he's not afraid of the moment. Like, we know that, especially after watching him last season for New York. So I think it's Dante, but either way, it's, Dante and Julius Randle versus LeBron and Austin Reeves. Like, you're always going to take the Lakers side of this. So I lean more with you, Scott. I think that this is a good Lakers matchup. I think that they just have a little bit more optionality, especially when I think that this could be a bad Gobert series. I know there's obviously the clip of Luka draining the shot over Gobert, but Gobert did do pretty well on him, like over the course of the entire series last year with the Dallas Minnesota matchup. But at the same time, I do think that this is a spot for the Lakers. I think that Coach Redick has a lot in his bag here that they can kind of unleash and unfurl on this Minnesota team. And I think that what I'm expecting is that the Lakers are going to blitz the fuck out of Anthony Edwards and just say, we don't care we don't care how you score overall, but it's not going to be you, Anthony Edwards, and just go from there. And I think that that's going to be something to watch. So I'm going to be looking for Anthony Edwards turnover props, I think, to start this game and to start this series. He probably plays some pretty lengthy minutes for Minnesota.
Well, just to add to that, though, you said it might be a bad Gobert series. Do you trust McDaniels offensively? No. I know we don't trust Conley offensively.
No, it's hard to trust anybody, I think, offensively for Minnesota outside of Ant. And then that's why I think the Lakers are going to say, we're just going to swarm you nonstop.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. I have the Lakers in 5 or 6 personally.
Yeah, I think the Lakers can take care of business here. So let's turn to the Rockets versus the Warriors. I think this is a series that is surprising to people based on the odds, right? Not necessarily because of the teams. The Rockets are 1.5-point favorites in game one, but the series price has them as an underdog. The series price has Houston as plus 138. The Warriors are minus 166. Colby, from a betting perspective, from an odds perspective, how do you look at this and say the Rockets are favored in game one and they're underdogs on the series?
This is a wild series, Joe. You have the Rockets actually plus 155 right now on DraftKings, I'm seeing. And it's hard to disagree, right? You look at a Warriors team that since the Jimmy Butler trade is 23-7. Who's to say you're going to bet against Stephen Curry, against Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün, led Rockets team that's very young. They haven't done it before. Ime Udoka could really be a big help to this team in this series, but I can't help but take Rockets at plus 155 because price. It's price, man. It's hard for me to shy away from that, and it scares me to fade Steph. Does Ime Udoka go to a drop coverage against Steph again, like the Celtics did in the finals way back when? Hopefully he learned his lesson in this one.
Yeah, I think that this is really, that's what the question is. And people, when they look at this, they can go, well, I can bet the Rockets game one. They're the home team, whatever. But Scott, like, how do you bet against Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry? Or are you taking it like Colby, where you look at this and you go, like, this number opened at plus 200. So the Rockets got bet immediately at that number, but is there a point where the number, like, you're like, I get that the number always matters, but like, it's Steph and Jimmy. What do you think, Scott?
Well, for starters, I'll mention the player prop angle because I actually did place 2 player prop bets already. I bet Curry to lead the series in points at plus 105, and I took Jimmy Butler to lead the series in points at plus 390. It's down to plus 240, but I basically set up an arbitrage of Warriors players because I don't see who on Houston's going to lead the series in points. So I took those 2 guys. I feel pretty good about it. If you asked me about 2 weeks ago who I would take in this series, I would have told you Warriors in 5. You ask me now, and I think it's Warriors in 7. I think this is a very tough series for Golden State. The truth is, I liked how they were playing a little while ago, but as the season went along, and as Kuminga got thrown into the doghouse again by Steve Kerr, they rely so heavily on Steph and Jimmy to do everything offensively when it comes to scoring for this team that if they have one off night, I don't know if they're going to get by. Does Steph and Jimmy need to combine for 55 points a game, 60 points a game between them to actually win this series? They might. And you're also looking at how the Warriors played against the Grizzlies. Did you like how they played? They blew a 20-point lead. Edey was awful the entire first half and was still a monster. He had 14 and 17. And Golden State couldn't rebound the ball. They got dominated on the boards. Ja got injured, and they were still in a dogfight with about a minute to go. So I do wonder, when you're looking at how the Grizzlies were able to get back into that game, they used size, they attacked the basket, and they dominated the boards. If you had a hard time with Edey, have fun with Şengün and Steven Adams. That's all Scott, I'm saying. You're going to have a hard time on the boards there. So I do think there is a path for Houston. The problem is, of course, in the half court. Do you trust Jalen Green? Do you trust Van Vliet, who's historically speaking been awful against Golden State since the NBA Finals? But I do think that's going to be the main concern for Houston. It's why I will pick Golden State to win the series, because I do trust Curry and Butler more than the options that Houston has. But Houston defensively held Curry to 3 points last game, with Amin Thompson just hounding him for the entire game. They have a lot of bodies they can throw at him. You might see an interesting amount of technical fouls between Dillon Brooks and Draymond Green. It's a separate storyline, but for me, I like the under in almost every game. I think they're going to kill each other on the floor. So I think first team to 100 wins almost all these games. But I am going to go with Golden State in 7. Close game. Yes, I am picking Golden State to go into Houston in Game 7 and win. But I think it's a war, because I do think that Houston possesses a lot of depth and a lot of size that can really frustrate Golden State. And the reliance they're putting on Curry and Butler to score a lot of their points is definitely problematic when you're against an elite defensive team. I think it's going to be a serious war from start to finish, but I am going to pick Golden State.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think this is going to be an absolute battle. I also think it's going to make whatever team comes out of this in the next round, they are going to be whipped, Like they are going to struggle, I think, in that game 1, especially if it's a 7-game series. Like we know when teams come off of game 7s and the other team that they're playing as a rest advantage, those teams crush in game 1. So that's going to be a spot to look for, I think, moving forward. And looking at a rebounds perspective, I don't know how they stop Şengün on the glass, like you said. I think that his props are probably good in game 1 to be rebounds leader. I wish there was a way to parlay it a little bit because, I mean, minus 220 is steep, but I don't think it's outrageous for Şengün to be the rebounds leader in this series. Do either of you guys have any thoughts on a series leader for anything? I know threes leader I was a little interested in. Threes are always a little bit variable, but if Amin Thompson is absolutely cloaking Steph Curry, can somebody beat Steph as threes leader, maybe like a Jalen Green that's just chucking because that's what he's going to do?
Yeah, I just wanted to add earlier when Scott was bringing up the Grizzlies, the Grizzlies rank 2nd in total rebounds per game. Who ranks first? The Rockets. So it's the exact angle that the Rockets are going to need to take. They're going to need to hound people on defense and get boards.
I like it. So let's dive into the last series that we have a line for right now, and that's the Denver Nuggets versus the Los Angeles Clippers. The Denver Nuggets are now an underdog. They opened as a pretty heavy favorite in this series relative to some of these other series that we're looking at in the series prices. That's a pretty significant swing for a team that has the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic. Scott, what do you think about not only the line flipping, but LA's chances to advance and really, I guess, I don't want to say upset based on where the line is now, but to be able to flip home court in this first round of the Western Conference playoffs?
So I'll preface it by saying that Joker is probably my favorite player of all time, or he's one of my favorite players of all time. Having said that, I think the Clippers should win this series pretty decisively, in my opinion. I will give Joker a couple games because he's Joker, and of course he's going to invent ways to manufacture 110 points in a game because he's Joker. But I do think when you're looking at the roster, I can't stand the supporting cast that Denver has. I feel like you're looking at all the injuries they've had with Jamal Murray, who I know people are talking about Kawhi's injury history. He's played for the last month. Murray came back with like 2 games to go. I haven't really seen much of him recently. Same with Porter Jr. Is he going to stay healthy? I don't really know, but you're looking at their bench, non-existent. You have Westbrook by himself out there, basically. Bit of Strother. You want to throw in Peyton Watson a bit, sure, but they have the 3rd fewest bench points per game in the entire league. The Clippers right now are playing at an elite level. And of course, the main concern with the Clippers is Kawhi's injury history, and you're looking at Harden's playoff history. It's a lot of stuff that happened in the past, which I can't really use in this because I'm going just based on what I've seen and all the metrics. The Clippers are the better team. So I understand why the line has moved. They've been the hottest team in the league for the last month, basically. They beat Golden State in Golden State in the regular season finale. Harden and Kawhi look great. Powell's been fantastic, and Zubac has been incredible. Zubac's taken a leap, and I feel like that's also why I am going to give the Clippers a decent edge in this. Because even if Joker has a monster series, which he should, if we're being honest here, if you can limit the other guys, you like your chances. And the fact is Zubac is a great player on the boards and offensively, and most importantly, he really does not get in foul trouble that much. I think if you want to leave Zubac on an island with Joker, you can at least try to get by doing it and not get totally torched. You don't have to take him off the court. But you're looking at the scoring options with Murray, who just came back from injury, Porter Jr., who's very streaky, because he also never really generates his own shot. He mostly comes around screens and shoots. Besides that, though, do you like the other options? They fired their coach midseason because the owner didn't even like how the team was playing, and they fired the GM too. So there's a lot of turmoil, a lot of disarray going on with Denver, and the Clippers right now are just humming. I think this team's better than Denver. I would take the Clippers minus 1.5 games. Yeah,
I think the Clippers, especially then, you get them in 6 in LA if you take the 1.5. So
in the into it, that's going to be crazy over there.
Yeah, the wall is literally going to be crazy. So I do think that the Clippers are probably the right side here. It's definitely hard to bet against Jokic, but I do think that you're right in terms of some of the coverage that they might throw at him with Zoo kind of just being able to play him straight up. On the same note, I bet I had put in 2 long shots, Colby, for Series 3's leader. Well, I guess one's not really a long shot. I took Norman Powell at plus 550.
I gave that out last night.
It's great bet. I love it. And then I also took Jokic at 25-1 because if Zoo is going to cover him heads up, You know who actually led Denver in threes per game against the Clippers this year? Jokic. He was almost at 3 per game. So in the event that maybe Powell just goes cold or Jokic just says, hey, like I got to do something, like we're getting cooked. I thought that it was worth like a little bit of a sprinkle at that number. I do obviously like Norm a bit more, but Colby, what do you think about either of those? And is there any bet that you might want to add for this series?
Yeah, that taking Joker at plus, I'm seeing plus 3,000 on DraftKings right now is an electric bet because one, he has a moonball 3-pointer and it's just majestic to watch. But I really do think that's a great bet against Clippers team that, yeah, like you said, Zubac can play him straight up. I think this series is interesting. And I wanted to ask you guys, I mean, coming into this series, I don't think that this Nuggets team is really fit to Jokic's strength. And there's been a lot of coverage about that in very recently after the firing. But coming into this series, a healthy Kawhi, is it fair to, or not even fair, but like, is this a crazy take that Kawhi actually comes into this series as the most impactful and best player?
Best player is tough, but I think impactful I can agree with.
Yeah, I think impactful makes some sense because he's the guy. This is like the dream, right? This is like the player that we've been talking about for however many seasons. Is he going to be healthy in the playoffs? He's finally here. No Paul George. He's at home, not healthy. But at the same time, Kawhi has been the guy that we've been saying we need to see him, and he looked amazing against the Warriors. So if okay, here's the question, Scott. Then I think this is the pivot off of what you were asking, Colby. If the Clippers advance to, let's say, the Western Conference Finals, let's say they win the Western Conference Finals, because I don't know if they'll win the Finals, but maybe the Western Conference Finals. Who's the MVP of this team? Like, who out of this team would you want to have for Western Conference MVP? Would you want to have Zoo? Would you want to have Harden? Would you want to have Kawhi?
As much as I love Zoo, there's no way the voters would give it to him over Kawhi or Harden.
Never.
It would not happen. So shout out to Norman Powell, by the way, but he also wouldn't get it. It depends how well Harden plays, because there's a narrative there. Because Harden's been viewed as the playoff choker of the decade. If you want to throw an Embiid in there, you can too. He's been injured half the time. But Harden's played, and he's lost a bunch of heartbreaking series, partly because Golden State, had a dynasty and they got Durant and all that stuff. But I do think if you're going by narrative, I would take Harden. Ball's in his hands all the time. Even if Kawhi scores, Harden probably ends up with 9 or 10 assists per game. I would go with Harden if I had to pick one of those guys. But you're going for narratives. That's kind of the thing about awards, is that you got to remember the reporters are the one who vote on this stuff. It's why Iguodala won MVP over Steph Curry, for example. So I do think you're looking at the narrative, probably supporting Harden in this case. You have a good storyline for both, but Harden being viewed as a playoff choker and having a moment here, I think would be enough to get, maybe some tears from the reporters. I go with Harden if I had to pick out of those.
I think that's definitely fun. But let's I'm going to put you both on the spot before we get you guys out of here for this show. Who's coming out of the East? Who's coming out of the West? Who's winning the Larry O'Brien? Scott, I'll start with you.
Yes, I'm going to go with the very bold call of Celtics Thunder in the NBA Finals. The Celtics, I have to. The Cavs, I think that once again they have the makeup of the actual roster to beat Boston. But I didn't like how they played the last month. I know you could argue they were coasting. Mitchell missed some games. We'll see how sharp they're going to look. But Boston's been there before. I just think at the end of the day, when they're healthy, they have so much depth. And it's really tough to match up with. OKC is the tricky one, because if you're able to at least limit Shea and force other guys to beat them, do they have enough? I've seen enough growth from the supporting cast where I think they can get it done. The path could be tricky, though. You look at the Clippers maybe in the second round and probably the Lakers in the third round, if I had to guess. So that can be tricky. I'm hoping it's not Celtics-Lakers, personally. I'll go with the Thunder, though. Maybe I'm willing to be a little bit higher. People are starting to sell on the Thunder, and I feel like they're starting to disrespect how good this team actually was. I'll go with the Thunder. I like what they've done with Chet, with, of course, Hartenstein. Their win percentage is great anyway. But with Hartenstein in the lineup, it's insane. I'll go with, once again, chalk. Give me the Celtics and the Thunder.
All right. And the Thunder, you have the Thunder on top?
I'm going to go Boston.
All right. Colby, what are you at?
I think my favorite bet on the board to entire thing we've talked about today is Oklahoma City Thunder to win the Western Conference. They're 4th in points per game, first in steals. They have the fewest offensive turnovers per game. They're first in free throw percentage. They're deep as any team I've ever seen, and they do all the small things right. That ultimately does win championships. It's going to be really tough to get through Boston. But in this Western Conference, I really do think that they are above the rest. And like I was bringing up before about Rithmm's expected win percentage stat, they're at 68.2%. The Cavs and the Celtics are second and third at 63%. And then you have to go all the way down to 58% to get to the next Western Conference team with the T-Wolves, Clippers, Grizzlies, Rockets, Nuggets are in there, Warriors are in there. They're all kind of clustered together. And I really think Oklahoma City is above the rest. And at minus 140 to win the Western Conference, I'm happy taking that juice. And I really think you could play that out to minus 170, minus 180, close to minus 200. So that's where I'm at on the Western Conference winner. I'm a Celtics fan, and I don't see how you could bet against that team as well. Just like the Thunder, they're deep, they're experienced, they play good defense, they do the little things right, they have a great coach, and they play with a really great identity, which is important. And I think that's probably the one question for the Thunder is, they don't have that playoff identity yet, but there's only one way to get that playoff identity, and that's to play well in the playoffs, which I think that they're set up really well to do. To go to the Cavs, I think Cavs at plus 700 to come out of, is that to come out of no, that's to win it all.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad bet at that value. I think they're being undervalued at plus 700. So I would do a little sprinkle on the Cavs too. If you think that Boston can be beaten.
Yeah, I think the number on Cleveland is really good, but I do have the questions about seeing them perform. What's their optionality in the playoffs? How flexible can they be, especially with two smaller guards in Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland? But for me, I'm kind of with you both. It feels chalky, but I like Oklahoma City to come out of the West. I like the Celtics to come out of the East. I'm going to get on the limb, and I'm going to take the Thunder to win the title. I think the defense has been incredible. I think that it is traveling. It's something that's going to be able to be carried with them, even if the moment is a little bit bigger. I think that they have so much optionality on the defensive side of the ball. If somebody gets in foul trouble, it's not the end of the world. They have a million other options to throw out there. So I like Oklahoma City, and it feels chalky, but I feel like I've been building positions up throughout the course of the entire season that I can now take the chalk, and it's fine. So we've got two Celtics picks and one Oklahoma City pick to win the NBA Finals. Guys, I really appreciate you joining me. We've got, I'm going to put your information out here again. We've got Colby Olson at Colby _ Olson 3 for Just Baseball, and Scott Reichel at Reichel Radio, host of the SGPN NBA Gambling Podcast. Thank you guys for joining me. For Colby Olson, for Scott Reichel, I'm Joe Dellera, and thank you guys for joining for another episode of Coast to Coast.